World War III, Battlefield 2042, BattleBit. Some of my favorite games of the past 5 years. All of them pretty trash. Trying to find a game that can perfectly emulate the feeling of all-out warfare is surprisingly pretty hard. Not everything can quite scratch that niche gaming itch. So much thought has to go into the balancing of the mode, where one form of play does not dominate the playing field. The vehicle gameplay has to be designed in a way where it's both easy to use but hard to master, allowing someone who wants to put in the hours to learn the vehicles to become a menace to the enemy team, but not indestructible, to the point where they can terrorize foot soldiers indefinitely for an entire match. The soldier gameplay has to follow that same principle. Easy to pick up, but rewarding to master. It needs to have just enough depth for people to really not just have surface level fun, but for something they can really bite their teeth in and spend copious amount of hours trying to perfect the mechanics without even noticing. If general gunplay and vehicle play weren't hard enough to balance on their own, now you have to mesh these two concepts together in a live multiplayer experience where in theory, no one type of play should outperform the other. If done right, everything should feel like a game of rock, paper, scissors, where no matter what obstacle is in front of you, there's always something that can come along the way, specifically designed to help deal with that obstacle. And sadly, in today's modern gaming scene, we don't really see much of that. Sure, there's games out right now that everyone gravitates towards that offers those experiences, but to simply put it, those games are getting old. Old to the point that playing them today isn't really a good representation of how these games were at their prime. Banished to the realm of unemployment, where no fun is allowed. Everyone wants these type of games. Everyone wants these type of experiences. But not everyone can agree on what these games need to focus on to truly be perfect. With the vast possibilities that all-out warfare brings to the table, you open yourself to a lot of discussion on what should be the top priority to really shine among the rest. Whether it be gunplay, movement, or ground and air vehicles alike. But it doesn't have to be like this. Not everything has to be God's gift from the heavens. A game doesn't really need industry-defining graphics, nor does it need top-of-the-line gunplay, nor does it really need industry-defining features. Sometimes all a game really needs to be enjoyable is to simply be fun, and that's what Delta Force provides. Delta Force, the game, the movie. It's a brand new video game from the once dormant franchise releasing on December 5th on PC in a free-to-play early access beta form, with its eventual full launch on consoles and mobile coming down the line next year. The game itself has 3 main modes for you to mess around with. The single-player narrative Black Hawk Down sees you relive the famous Ridley Scott movie of the same name in a faithful recreation, even using the same music tracks heard in the movie from the great Hans Zimmer. How much of the movie are they going to portray in the game? I honestly have no idea, I'm gonna be honest. But personally, it's the portion of the game that I am most excited for, overshadowing the next 2 modes by a clear mile. Now, despite the game having their free-to-play label slapped onto it, they have confirmed that this will be the only paid portion of the game. How much? I do not know, but I sure hope it's in the $20 to $25 range at the very least. The next game mode on the list is called Operations. It's another take at the extraction shooter genre. If you don't know what the mode is like, well, it's simple. You and a couple of buddies drop into a map. It's your task to go out and collect high valuable loot, or any loot for that matter, and extract off the map while fending off NPCs you encounter in the world ready to gun you down, or other groups of real people who are just as eager to gun you down and loot your dead corpses for valuables you just wasted 15 minutes of your life scavenging for. Just like everyone else in the scene, the mode is also going to have key features that sets their experience above the rest in the eyes of people wanting another extraction shooter. Operations is set to have 5 maps on launch, with various dynamic events occurring from breaking a dam and flooding the map, to extracting via a fucking rocket. But now we get to the main event, and going off how I opened the video, my most anticipated part of the game. Warfare. Warfare is your 32v32 large-scale all-out warfare experience that sees you battle on land, air, and sea, spanning across 5 maps at launch, from brand new experiences to classic maps from the Delta Force back catalog. 10 vehicles spanning all 3 forms of combat in multiple supportive and attack roles, with each one being customizable to the player wants. 50 weapons across all operator classes with an in-depth gunsmith system which not only allows you to pick from literal 1,000 attachments, guys, I think we're overdoing it a bit, I'm not gonna lie, but the neat thing being you can actually adjust your gun to be exactly the way you want. Being able to correctly adjust where your foregrip is located on your gun and how magnified you want a certain scope to be, just to name a few examples. all of this being bundled in a long-term live service, which commits itself to regular updates each season with new maps, modes, operators, weapons, and vehicles each season, with the biggest promise to players being no such thing as pay to win in their game. All of this being brought to you by the developers of Call of Duty Mobile. Yeah, you think I'm joking, but I'm not. The developers of Delta Force is Teamy Studios, who's relatively stayed in the world of mobile gaming for the majority of its life, with some of their biggest games being Pokemon Unite and Call of Duty Mobile. And now they're ready to release an ambitious FPS shooter that's going to release on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and on mobile devices. Which honestly, good for them. But is any of this actually good? Now I know this is the question everyone wants answered when asking about any game, whether or not it's free to play. Is it any good? Is Delta Force worth the hype and worth the download? Yes. Thanks for watching. All jokes aside, I do believe the game is worth downloading and I do believe the game is alright. But that word in particular comes with heavy quotations. The problem with All Out Warfare is that it's not really made for everyone. Not everyone is going to have the same experience when booting up. Everyone wants something different from the mode. Everyone comes in with their own expectation and will judge the game as a whole if their niche expectations aren't met. And for me, well, it achieves the number one thing I had hoped for with the game, and be turn off your brain fun while I blast music in my headset and chill with friends on Discord while we all play our own separate games. I see it as one of those games, something you could just play in the background and just have a fun night. Now, I had the privilege to play the game since its alpha stage, and yeah, I didn't really have a good first impression with the game in its alpha stage. If you're one of the 5 people who are expecting me to release my thoughts on the alpha when the test finished, yeah, I did not work on that video for much as I just did not like it. Why make a video on something when you don't even like the topic in hand? It's one of those type of moments. But when Delta Force reached out asking if I wanted to be part of their play it early sessions to capture content for a video, my first thought was, how did you pick me of all people? Followed by a yes. And after playing the game in its current form, I can strongly say that it feels like a different game, in a lot of aspects where I thought the alpha failed me. But just like everything, there's still aspects of the game that still need some work badly. And now is the time where I'm going to talk to you about my experience playing the game. Is this just for me to rant about the alpha? Yes. But it's also a way to see just how far the game has changed since. The multiplayer has several modes to play around with, 6 to be exact from what we got to experience. From King of the Hill being your conquest-like mode, where you are in a sandbox fighting for control over the map, to Attack and Defend, which is your breakthrough/operation type experience, where the attackers move from sector to sector on the map until they push the defenders out. And the other 4 game modes being derivatives of these, whether it be playing them on smaller maps or fighting against AI, all of them being pretty fun for what they are. But the game modes can only be as fun as the maps that are on offer allows them to be. And these maps still remain to be one of my favorite aspects of the game. The maps in Delta Force aren't blown out to proportionate size. They are all dense environments that each offer something different from the last, whether it be aesthetically or through its flow. If you want the feeling of naval assault as you move up the beaches, then go play this map. You want the feeling of dense urban combat from building to building, then play this map. Or if you want to relive what it was like in the Great War in a modern setting, then play on the Trench map. Of course, each map is going to have their strong suits, and when you get that perfect mixture of map and mode, it's a really great experience. The movement has seen some of the biggest changes out of everything I've seen. One of my biggest complaints from the alpha was its movement, as it honestly just made the game feel sluggish, as if I was running underwater, and it was very easy and frequent to get stuck on objects. But luckily, they listened. What was once slow, stiff, and boring is now fast, fluid, and exciting. I don't feel like I'm being weighed down by the kit my character has on as I move around. I'm able to vault around the map and move from cover to cover much faster than I ever could in the alpha. But it wasn't just the fluidity that saw an upgrade, but you are now able to do multiple actions at the same time. So now you can throw a grenade while changing your stance at the same time. Something as simple as that was not doable during the alpha. Proning and using your ability. Nope. Crouching and popping smokes. Nope. Why? You tell me. During the alpha, people made the discovery that live matches were using AI. Not AI in that sense of the word, but I mean bots to pad out servers. Now on the surface, this may not look like a big issue, but it was the way Delta Force was going about doing it was what people had issue with. You see, not only did they not tell any of us that they were going to be doing this, but they disguised the bots with usernames that ended with TTV. Brilliant, I must say, I'm not gonna lie. So of course, after being outed, they came clean and said they will no longer implement AI troops into the base game to pad out the servers, and that they are also moving the AI into their own dedicated game mode where you can play and earn XP. Again, really great improvement from the alpha. The gunplay feels very crisp, fun, and rewarding. Could my enjoyment of the gunplay be a placebo from the movement being a major upgrade? It probably is, I'm not gonna lie. The gunsmith is really fun to play around with, but the cool thing is that each gun has developer suggested loadouts for you to play around with if you're not sure what to use for a gun, which honestly, you did not have to do that, but I'm really glad you did. More games should do this as a matter of fact. The vehicles. Ooh, ooh boy. Listen, I need you to understand. In other games, I'm a really big vehicle player. If a game has a tank, you bet your ass I'm gonna be commanding it. And to say that I did not like the vehicle gameplay in the alpha would be a big understatement. There's no other way around it. There's no jokes to be made here. It was just bad. It was definitely the game's weakest link. Each vehicle, regardless of the size, failed to have any weight to them. They controlled horribly and could easily be taken out by anyone on the ground. The helicopters felt just as bad to control and did absolutely no damage to anything. Everything in the game felt like the equivalent of smashing two toys together and expecting one to explode after doing it enough. But luckily, they listened. Partially. Just like the movement, everything got revamped for the land vehicles. Tanks and other APCs all felt like they finally got that oomph that was missing from them in the alpha. Each felt like an actual mechanized vehicle of war with actual weight to them. Tank engagements were actually fun to experience and did not resolve into a who shot first automatically wins competition. The APCs can pull their own weight just as much as the main battle tanks. They often end up beating tanks in battle, so if you're a tank player and you get a little too cocky, watch out for these guys as they can ruin the day of any tank driver. But what you see is what you get. Despite the customization, there's still that feeling of shallowness to the gameplay. Like, not much to really learn to master. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, that depends on your own interests. If you just want the vehicle to work, well then you'll have fun. But if you want something more from this, then you'll probably be disappointed. But after all of that, everything feels great if you stay on the ground. The attack helis are this game's greatest weakness. They don't feel good to fly. The controls feel awful. The handling is just as bad, and in the event you do figure out the controls, the firepower these guys pack makes me question why I even picked them to begin with. If you get a lock on, and trust me, you will constantly be hearing that alert telling you there's a missile coming towards you, you better hope you get out of the line of sight as fast as possible because the flares cooldown time are ungodly long. What else is there to say? Oh yeah, the game has destruction. It's not anything big. You're not going to be seeing skyscrapers fall out the sky like Levolution, but you're able to blow up walls, barriers, and houses. It's one of those things that when you're playing in the game, you tend to forget it's there until the concrete barrier you're hiding behind gets blown up and now you're exposed. So the game has operators.
Don't be sad. This is just how it works out sometimes.
Yeah, it's obvious this is going to be the big thing people fixate on the game. For many people, it's going to be the reason why they play. But for others, it's going to be the reason why they never come close to this game for as long as they live. And after playing with them in the beta, I can proudly say that they're just there for me. They're neither good or bad, they just exist amongst the chaos. Which is honestly the best case scenario in my opinion. If underutilized, the question would be why the hell are they even in there to begin with? But if you overdo them, the game starts to feel like a hero shooter. And you don't really want either of those in a game like this, especially for this being a first for the franchise. No matter how you look around it, it's basically impossible to implement them in a game without angering some people. It's just unavoidable. Their existence will cause commotion, so having my reaction be that they just exist in the game in a neutral response is a pretty perfect middle ground to have. But my take that they're mid for the most part isn't an excuse for poor balancing. With how the game is presenting itself, balancing these guys have to take top priority. A way to ensure that stuff like the smoke screen cannot be used and abused like how it's currently being used and abused in the live game. Sure, the main abilities for the most part are non-lethal, but they're still being spammed every second of each map currently. And spam is spam. Sure, some maps don't feel as bad, but other maps makes you feel like you're playing Silent Hill. An easy fix I would suggest is to simply increase the cooldown timer for a lot of these abilities, or deactivating all of the abilities right now until you guys can figure out a good way to re-implement them back into the live game. Also, why the hell is this the only guy with a slide? What the hell? Why, Timmy? Why do you torment me? As we move onwards, I do have some thoughts that I do want to express towards the devs. If you haven't noticed throughout the video, the developers have shown to the community that they do in fact listen to feedback. They look closely to see what people are saying about their game, so I just want to speak out some stuff in the hopes that someone over there will listen. And if you guys want, please voice your own concerns down in the comments, as I'm pretty sure they will still read them. In a game where two factions are going at it in these giant 32v32 player servers, why are both factions using the exact same equipment? I know this must be the lowest on the priority board, but visual difference between two sides fighting can go a long way to sell a multiplayer experience. And I'm not asking for completely brand new vehicles, I'm just asking for them to be a different model visually. Like the main battle tank in the game right now looks like an Abrams. Well, why can't the enemy tank look like a T-72? I know it's not as simple to do for operators as you want to sell skins and the colored LEDs indicate friend from foe, but something as making, I don't know, an evil version of the same character for the opposing faction would be great. Like, they work and function the exact same way, except that their equipment, for example the stim gun, visually looks different. I don't know, give one side a beard or something. Another thing I want to know is just how monetization would affect the game's aesthetic in the long run. I've already gotten a taste to the skins you want to add to the game, and so far it looks great. Like, I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement that we don't care about weapon skins like a pink AUG or a white attack helicopter. But will it ever get to the point when we start seeing elves and dragons on the battlefield shooting blue lasers from their weapons? For the most part, I feel like people start to care negatively about cosmetics when it affects their core aesthetic to the game. What's even the purpose of the game? What's the story behind all of this? I know it can't really relate to the campaign as there's a giant time jump, but are we going to get a story told in the multiplayer through the game's seasonal content? Could we get opening cinematics at the start of each season showing what's going on and why things are happening? Once again, probably at the very bottom of their priority list, but still something that will go a long way to keep players engaged throughout a seasonal content. And I think my final question, or well, request is, can you please make this available on Linux systems? It's a whole PC market that's going to waste that's just begging for a developer to notice them and release something. Am I just saying this because I own a Steam Deck and the thought of playing this game in bed would be amazing to me and millions of other Steam Deck users? Yes. So what? Also, can you make this game Steam Deck verified? There it is. Ridley Scott's Delta Force. In all honesty, if the game was still comparable to the alpha build, this would have been a very different video. One filled with hatred rather than relief that it's an actual enjoyable experience. Of course, games like these are not going to be everyone's cup of tea. What one person can love in something can be the reason why someone else hates it. The inclusion of operators in this game is just not going to make everyone happy. If you're someone who's already made their decision on the game based on that alone, but then there's not really much to sway your opinion back into playing the game. Which is kind of sad, because if I didn't get access to this beta early, I probably would have been the same as them. If the alpha build of the game continued to be the only version I played, then I probably wouldn't have touched this game until maybe a year later. Or hell, I would have probably written it off completely as just another meh game. And that's kind of the legacy this game is going to have for most people. Meh, not in a negative, or hell, even in a positive way, but for it literally just existing for players. It's very easy for a new game to release at a well-established gaming scene and quickly be labeled as a killer of a long-lasting title in that genre. The comparison for this game being nothing more than a 2042 clone that actually had time given in its development is something that's just never going to go away, especially with the specialists in play. And yeah, on a surface level, I would have to agree with those comparisons for the most part. At the end of the day, this game just feels like an amalgamation of every popular shooter out there right now. Not really standing out on doing something inventive or groundbreaking, but taking what others did and just perfecting it. Now, is that something you're looking for? Is a question you should ask yourself. If you're looking for something new that reinvents the wheel, then this may not be for you. But if you want something that's just the gaming equivalent of comfort food, then you should probably try it out. And honestly, the FPS sphere needs more games like that. It's completely okay for a game to release and not be the biggest thing in the world. Something being simply fun to play is more than enough for a majority of casual gamers. A game that just simply exists to play in the background and not give any thought while you watch an anime or listen to a podcast on your second monitor. First impressions are everything. They create long-lasting memories of how games are perceived to people. It dictates whether we see a game make a comeback after a rocky start or a game fall from grace due to mismanagement. This game has gone through major fundamental changes in such a short time frame that it's honestly weird and uncomfortable to know that the dev team are actively listening to our complaints and actively work towards fixing them. Is that praise for a studio doing the bare minimum? Yes, but in a field where no one else is even doing that, you have to give people their props when it's due. But the big question is, can it keep that momentum? Right now it's going live, but how will it fare once it fully releases on consoles? Could it keep that momentum, or will it just fizzle out? Time can only tell. But for the meantime, I know I'll just be sitting here waiting to see if this game will be Steam Deck verified. Please, I know one of you legally has to see this video, so please just do it.